Welcome back to the Minimalist Living Lab. I'm Hart. Yesterday, we began our journey into minimalism with a single, essential question. What are you making space for? It's a question that doesn't just challenge your closet. It challenges your calendar, your habits, your thoughts. Because minimalism is not about emptiness. It's about intentional space. Space for stillness. Space for clarity. Space for joy. But today, we flip the lens. Because before we can talk about what we're making space for, we need to talk about what's taking it up. There's something hiding in plain sight. Not just in the drawers that won't close, the closets we keep stuffing, or the garage we haven't opened in months. It's in our minds, our bodies, even in the way we breathe. It's called clutter. And its real cost? It's not just the time we waste searching for our keys. It's not just the frustration of a misplaced charger or an overdue task. The real cost of clutter is invisible. It's the weight on your chest you didn't know you were carrying. The tension in your shoulders. The noise that never seems to turn off. Because clutter isn't just a physical mess. It's mental static. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt heavy? You meant to relax. But instead, your eyes scan the scene. The overflowing bookshelf. The pile of laundry you meant to fold 2 days ago. The unopened mail stacked like a to-do list that never got done. And something inside you sinks. You feel behind before you've even begun. That feeling? You're not imagining it. It's what psychologists call environmental overstimulation. Clutter bombards your brain with choices, memories, reminders, and guilt. Each item, a tiny voice. Deal with me. Why haven't you used me? You said you'd get to me last week. And that constant visual noise, it chips away at your inner peace. Not with a hammer, but with a steady, silent drip. 1. Clutter equals cognitive load. Our brains were never built for clutter. They evolved to scan for danger, track patterns, and focus on what truly matters. But in a cluttered environment, your brain doesn't know what to prioritize. It sees everything and treats each item as equally important. That stack of unopened mail? It could be a bill. That to-do list buried under a notebook? It's unfinished business. That random item on the floor? It's just another unanswered question. Every item becomes a decision point. A whisper saying, should I put this away? Do I still need this? Why haven't I dealt with this yet? And the brain responds with microbursts of stress. Each small, almost imperceptible. But together, they add up. This phenomenon is known as decision fatigue. A state in which the quality of your decisions deteriorates simply because you've had to make too many. You might think you're ignoring the mess. But your subconscious mind isn't. It's working overtime, managing what you've left unmanaged. It's like trying to meditate while someone gently, but persistently, taps you on the shoulder every 10 seconds. At first, you might tune it out. But eventually, you crack. This is why so many of us wake up tired. Even after 8 hours of sleep. We haven't even poured the coffee. And already our minds are flooded with unresolved tasks, forgotten items, delayed decisions. Clutter doesn't just sit on your shelves. It squats in your mental real estate, draining your energy before you even realize it. And when this happens every day, it's not just inconvenient. It's exhausting. Because even doing nothing in a cluttered room requires mental effort. And that's the hidden burden. You're paying a toll with your focus, your calm, and your clarity, all just to exist in your own space. 2. Clutter triggers emotional weight. Clutter isn't just a visual disturbance. It's an emotional echo. Each object you hold on to, each drawer you avoid opening, often carries more than dust. It carries memory, expectation, and sometimes pain. Let's take a look at that jacket in the back of your closet. You haven't worn it in years, but you keep it because it was expensive. Or maybe it reminds you of a thinner version of yourself, a time when you felt more confident, more free. So every time you see that jacket, even just in passing, you're not just seeing fabric. You're seeing a version of you that you feel guilty for not being. Or that box of old notebooks from college. You tell yourself they might be useful one day. But really, they're holding the weight of unfinished dreams. The novel you never wrote. The path you never pursued. The version of your life that you imagined but never lived. Clutter is a conversation you haven't finished. It's a loop you haven't closed. And your mind, your emotional self, keeps returning to it. That's why clutter often comes with guilt. Guilt for not using something. Guilt for not donating it. Guilt for not being who you thought you'd be by now. Even sentimental items can become emotionally heavy. A gift from someone who's no longer in your life. A photo from a time that no longer exists. They tug at you. Sometimes gently. Sometimes sharply. But always persistently. And over time, these emotional tugs add up. They don't just weigh down your shelves. They weigh down you. Your ability to feel light. To move forward. To breathe deeply in your own home. Because when your environment is filled with objects that spark regret, comparison, or sadness, your nervous system never fully relaxes. It stays alert. Guarded. Quietly stressed. This is why clearing clutter can sometimes lead to unexpected tears. Or unexpected joy. You're not just clearing objects. You're releasing emotions that have been trapped in plain sight. You're letting go of stories that no longer serve you. 3. Clutter and anxiety, the science. You don't need to be a psychologist to feel the connection between clutter and anxiety. But science confirms what so many of us already know in our bones. A cluttered space fuels a cluttered mind. In a landmark study from UCLA's Center on Everyday Lives of Families, researchers spent years observing the daily routines of 32 middle-class families. Their findings were staggering. The more objects piled up in a home, especially visible, unorganized clutter, the higher the stress hormone cortisol, particularly in women. In fact, they found a direct link. The messier the home, the more likely a woman was to report feeling overwhelmed, depressed, or constantly fatigued. Think about that. Just being in a cluttered space, not even cleaning it, just existing in it, can chemically change your body's stress levels. Your brain interprets visual chaos as danger, as something unresolved, as a problem that demands your attention. Even if you're not consciously aware of it, your nervous system is on alert. And it doesn't stop at stress. Clutter has also been linked to poorer sleep quality, increased anxiety symptoms, decreased ability to focus, procrastination and avoidance behavior. Let's pause on that last one, procrastination. Clutter creates a feedback loop. You feel overwhelmed by the mess, so you delay dealing with it, which creates more clutter, which adds more stress. It's like trying to run while dragging an anchor. And the longer you wait, the heavier it gets. But here's something deeper. A cluttered space doesn't just create stress. It also blocks your natural coping tools. People often report that in tidy, calm environments, they think more clearly, feel more creative, Breathe more deeply. Make healthier choices. React with more patience. That's not a coincidence. That's your parasympathetic nervous system kicking in. The system responsible for rest, recovery, and calm. So when your space is visually quiet, your body can finally rest too. One more study worth noting. Researchers at Princeton found that visual clutter competes for your attention in the same way as noise. Too many items in your field of view reduce your brain's ability to process information effectively. In simple terms, clutter makes it harder to think. This is why so many people report feeling stuck, foggy, or numb in messy environments. It's not laziness. It's not weakness. It's your brain trying to function under constant static. So if you've ever looked around your home and thought, "Why do I feel so anxious here?" Now you know. Your anxiety might not just be in your head. It might be on your shelves, in your drawers, under your bed. 4. The illusion of control. One of the most surprising truths about clutter is this. We often keep it because we think it keeps us safe. It sounds strange, right? How can piles of unused stuff feel like protection? But that's exactly how clutter tricks the mind. It feeds a quiet, comforting illusion, control. If I hold on to this, I'll be ready. If I let this go, I might need it later. This reminds me of who I used to be, maybe I can become that again. These are not just excuses. They are emotional shields. Subtle, subconscious attempts to guard ourselves from fear. Fear of regret. Fear of loss. Fear of forgetting. Fear that if we let go of something external, we might lose a part of ourselves. Let's look closer. That drawer full of tech gadgets from 2013? They whisper, "You'll fix me someday. You're the kind of person who finishes things." Those art supplies from a hobby you gave up? They quietly say, "Maybe you're still creative. Maybe you haven't really changed." Even the birthday cards in a shoebox from people no longer in your life. They carry this unspoken message. This proves you were loved. You mattered. Don't forget that. And so we hold on. To things. To identities. To versions of ourselves that may no longer be true. But here's the irony. In trying to hold on to control, we create more mental chaos. Instead of facing the truth of how we've grown, or who we've become, we bury it under layers of maybe someday. Clutter becomes a form of avoidance. A soft, padded wall between us and the hard questions. What am I afraid to let go of? What future am I unwilling to trust? Who am I without this story, this status, this stuff? And yet, we keep convincing ourselves that having more options, more backups, more just-in-case items will give us peace. But peace doesn't come from accumulation. It comes from alignment. From being able to walk into a room and know, everything here has a purpose. Everything here is chosen. Nothing here is holding me hostage. Here's a gentle truth. Letting go doesn't mean losing control. Letting go is control. It is the choice to say, I trust myself. I trust that if I need something, I'll find a way. I trust that who I am is not tied to what I own. Minimalism isn't about deprivation. It's about sovereignty. And clutter? Clutter isn't a fortress. It's a story we forgot to finish. 5. Mental clarity begins with physical space. There's a quiet, transformative truth that minimalists eventually discover. One that no book or checklist can fully prepare you for. When you clear your space, you begin to clear your mind. It sounds simple, maybe even obvious, but the impact is profound. Because the environments we live in are not neutral. They are mirrors, reflecting back our thoughts, our energy, our state of being. A cluttered room reflects a cluttered heart. A disordered space reflects a distracted mind. And when you start removing the external noise, the stacks, the piles, the overflow, you begin to notice something else. A spaciousness inside. It often begins with a small moment. You clear off a countertop. You organize a drawer. You walk into that space the next day. And without even thinking about it, you breathe differently. Deeper. Easier. Freer. You may not realize it, but your body does. There's less tension in your jaw. Less noise in your thoughts. A softness where there was once stress. That one small space becomes an invitation to come back to yourself. Here's the paradox. We often think clarity comes from thinking harder. But more often than not, it comes from subtracting. From taking things away. Not adding more. The fewer decisions you have to make when you wake up, the more energy you have for what really matters. The fewer distractions around your workspace, the more freely your ideas can flow. The fewer just-in-case items crowding your closet, the more confident you become in the choices you do make. It's not about perfection. It's about permission. To stop carrying more than you need. Think about monks in monasteries, writers retreating to cabins, artists seeking clean studios. There's a reason clarity is often born from stillness, and stillness is born from space. When we remove the clutter, we don't just find cleanliness. We find access to focus, to presence, to joy. We find our center. And here's the beautiful ripple effect. When your space feels intentional, your day feels intentional. Your work, your rest, your conversations. They all start to carry more weight, more meaning, more you. Minimalism isn't just an aesthetic. It's a strategy for peace and clarity. It doesn't begin on the page. It begins on the shelf. 6. A small practice, the clarity box. Sometimes the hardest part of letting go is knowing where to begin. We look around our homes and feel overwhelmed. Where do you start when everything feels tangled, emotionally and physically? That's why I want to offer you something simple. Something gentle. Something small enough not to scare your nervous system, but powerful enough to shift your entire relationship with space. I call it the clarity box. Here's how it works. Find a medium-sized cardboard box, a basket, or even an empty drawer. Walk slowly through your home, no rush, no pressure. As you move, notice the items that spark a tiny reaction. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's annoyance. Maybe it's just a subtle ugh. Pick 10 of those items. Only 10. Place them in the box. Then close it. Put the box somewhere out of sight, under a bed, in a closet, or in the trunk of your car. Now, for 7 days, just live without those things. Don't donate them yet. Don't decide anything final. Just observe how you feel in the spaces they used to occupy. Does your room feel lighter? Do you breathe easier when you walk by that shelf? Do you notice more calm? More focus? If you find that you don't miss those items, or better yet, that you feel better without them, you've just discovered something powerful. You've been carrying more than you need. This practice is deceptively simple, but what it activates is profound. It disrupts automatic attachment. It gives your nervous system proof that letting go isn't dangerous. It builds trust between you and your space again. And unlike organizing, which often just rearranges the clutter, the clarity box is a practice in separation. A practice in discernment. A practice in choice. You're not asking, should I get rid of this? You're simply asking, how does my space feel without this in it? That question shifts everything. Because minimalism isn't about deprivation. It's about liberation. And here's the beauty of this practice. You can do it again. And again. And again. Each time, you peel back another layer. Each time, your space becomes a little quieter. And your mind does too. So go gently. You don't have to empty your whole house overnight. Sometimes, all it takes is a single box to make room for a new way of being. 7. You are not what you own. Here's a truth that may be uncomfortable at first, but deeply freeing once you let it in. You are not what you own. Not the designer bag. Not the books you haven't read. Not the souvenirs from vacations you barely remember. Not the dishes passed down from your grandmother. Not the awards gathering dust on your shelf. None of these things are you. And yet, so often, we confuse our identity with our inventory. We keep things because we fear that letting go means forgetting who we were. We hold on to clothes from a different era in our lives. Not because they fit, but because they remind us of when we fit into a world that felt more exciting, more hopeful, more free. We keep boxes of journals, certificates, photos, as if our worth is somehow stored in paper and ink. We keep gifts we don't love, because we don't want to offend the memory of someone who gave them to us. We equate value with volume. But that's a dangerous equation, because the moment your worth becomes tied to what you own, you begin to fear loss. And that fear grows heavy. Minimalism invites you to untangle that knot, to separate your essence from your possessions, to realize that the truest parts of you, your kindness, your curiosity, your resilience, can't be boxed, shelved, or sold. They live in how you show up, in how you love, in what you choose to let go of so you can be more fully present. When we cling to objects for identity, we shrink. We carry the past like armor. But real strength doesn't come from holding tightly. It comes from opening our hands. Here's something you might not expect. Letting go of physical items often leads to emotional expansion. You realize that your memories aren't in the object. They're in you. You realize that love doesn't require a shrine, just your presence. You realize that meaning isn't in the things, but in the choices you make each day to live with intention. You are not your clutter. You are not your collections. You are not your past purchases, your sunk costs, or your someday plans. You are something infinitely more valuable. And when you let go of what you are not, you finally get to meet who you are. 8. Your home is a mirror. Your home is more than a place to sleep. It's more than furniture, walls, or design choices. It's a reflection of your inner life. Every space you walk through daily, your hallway, your desk, your nightstand, tells a story. And often, it's a story you didn't even know you were telling. A cluttered kitchen might not just be about time or habit. It could reflect a life lived on autopilot, always rushing, rarely pausing. An overflowing closet may not be about fashion. It might speak of identity confusion, old roles you no longer play, or versions of yourself you're afraid to release. Even the garage filled with boxes you haven't opened in years? It's not just storage. It's memory. Sometimes it's grief. Sometimes it's avoidance. We often decorate our spaces with the past. But what if we allowed them to be shaped by the present? Here's something powerful. When you change your environment with intention, your thoughts begin to follow. You begin to feel capable again, in control again, present again. Because your external space, when aligned with your internal values, becomes a sanctuary. Not just a structure to live in, but a system that supports your growth. So ask yourself, does my home reflect the person I am now or the person I used to be? Do my surroundings calm me or constantly call for my attention? What kind of life am I silently reinforcing by the way my space is set up? And maybe the most important question, what do I want my space to say about what I value now? Minimalism isn't about creating a showroom. It's about creating a mirror that reflects peace, not pressure. Clarity, not chaos. Presence, not just possessions. When your space becomes that kind of mirror, you begin to see yourself more clearly too. And that's when transformation truly begins. So today, as we close this episode, I leave you with this. Don't start by judging the clutter. Start by listening to it. What is it telling you about how you've been surviving? And what might change if you chose to start living differently? What is your clutter truly costing you? Mentally, emotionally, energetically? And more importantly, what would it feel like to let it go? Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just one drawer. One decision. One breath at a time. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for creating space within yourself for this reflection and for the possibility of change. Tomorrow, we'll explore something quietly radical. The joy of less. Not the loss. Not the sacrifice. But the quiet joy of choosing what stays. Until then, take one breath. Take one step. And take one thing off your shelf. Your mind will thank you. This is Minimalist Living Lab. I'm Hart. See you in the next episode.